Thank you, Karen. Good morning, everyone. Today is May 13th, 2022. This is a meeting of the Electrical Work Examining Board. For the record, I would note that all appointed board members are here with the exception of Peter Jennings, John Yusa, and Christopher Brown. First order of business is to review previous board minutes. First one would be the February 18th board meeting, of which everybody's received a copy of these minutes, the draft copy. Hope you've all had an opportunity to review them. And I would entertain a motion so that we could have discussion if it's necessary. So would somebody make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Your motion is to accept? Okay.
To accept the minutes from February 18th, 2022.
And who seconded that? Paul?
I did.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Is there any discussion on the minutes of February 18th?
I was going to abstain because I wasn't at the meeting, so
Okay.
I didn't think it was right for me to vote on whether or not it's accurate.
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Jackie. Any discussion on the meeting, on the minutes? I'm sorry. Hearing none. All in favor, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? And abstentions? Jackie, everybody. So the minutes are accepted for February 18th. We also have special board meeting minutes of April 13th. Again, everybody should have received a draft copy of that and should have had an opportunity to review those. I'll entertain a motion on those as well.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from April 13th, 2022.
Okay. Is there a second?
I can second that one.
Okay. Second by Jackie. Is there any discussion on the minutes of April 13th? Seeing none, hearing none, all in favor of acceptance of the minutes?
Aye.
Raise your hand and indicate aye.
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 Okay, any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. Those minutes are accepted. Thank you. Oh, it comes. Let the record show that Mr. Yusa has just joined us here today. It just got on board. Thank you for joining us, John.
I'm sorry, the setup of two different computers on my desk have taken change some of my privileges, so it took a little bit. You gotta love technology.
I get it. I get it. Believe me, I get it. This is a point where request anybody that's on this meeting that has any comments or concerns on anything that they want to bring before the board at this point. This would be anything that's a non-agenda item. And I will make the same call toward the end of the meeting as well. Hearing none. Okay. Moving on. We have the DCP investigation reports. We have three of them here. The first one is dated at the bottom.
They will be
March.
November to December of 2021.
Yeah, I've got them here, Janita.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry,
oh,
Mr. Chairman.
yeah, no problem. I just had to separate them. The papers were sticking. There's one report from January 1st, 22 to 2/28/22. which has the single item on it. Any questions on that report by the board for the department? Okay. The next-
Mr. Chairman, yes, there's one file that was closed, but we also received 5 new files, complaints.
Okay. I also have a report from 3/1 to 4:30. Is there any questions on any of those? Guess not. If not, that's good. And then we have one other remaining report, which was the 11/1 to 12/31 report, which we discussed at the last board meeting. And the first 3 items I was questioning, looking for in column N, as in Nancy. It says to contact legal. And we're looking for some clarification on why that was the case. Can somebody from investigation or legal?
Well, yeah, this is Paul Grabowski from legal. I'm happy to explain. And I don't know why the info wasn't in there. Must have had to do with the way it was inputted into our system, but those 3 all had hearings held before the board on March 11th, 2021. They all had final decisions and orders that were signed by the chairman in November of 2021. So those are all closed cases because they had hearings and they had final decisions.
Okay. Because it was very just confusing to see that.
Right,
No
and I noticed on the new reports that Janita circulated that they have an explanation. You know, if there's a final decision, there's an explanation. So I think it was a matter of inputting. Whoever inputted that in didn't put an explanation. So make sure in the future that there's an explanation, because then we don't have this confusion.
Nope. Okay, great. No, I just need the clarification because it was confusing as to why. It's the first time we saw it that way, to be honest with you. So, but thank you for the clarification, Paul. Those were all final decisions. Anybody have any other questions on the investigation report that was submitted? Janita, did you want to add anything to that?
I'm forgetting which boards I bring this up to. So if it's a repeat, I'm sorry, but just a generalized thing. The department went through a lot of trouble to create anonymous complaint forms for the boards, for the associations, the unions, and everybody out there that was clamoring. We had to have an anonymous complaint form. And the thing is, if people have to click, when they click in anonymous, that means they're anonymous, they don't exist. An open and under investigation file is not going to be discussed with them. And that means you can't call and scream and yell at our clerks or my investigators and stuff because you don't exist. If that happens, we're going to ask for a notarized statement from that person to indicate if you want information and a status, you're going to have to identify yourselves for the record, and it's going to be inputted to the file, and we'll go from there. The bigger problem is people who've clicked in the anonymous complaint box, turn around and then in the body of their complaint say, call me at blah, blah, blah number so I can discuss it with you. Or they say, contact me at blah, blah, blah email address. And I'm like, oh my God, you're not anonymous anymore. Part of our complaint process is the person you complained about is going to get a copy of the complaint and a letter. We're going to be looking for a response, for licenses, apprenticeship cards, permits and everything else. And if you just put your phone number and your email address in there, they're going to know it's you. So I would just ask that people who want to be anonymous, we have no problem with that. But don't put your email address or your phone number in the body of the complaint because you want to talk about it. The other thing is, just as a reminder, anonymous complaints are very, very hard for us to prove the alleged violations because we have nobody to go back to ask for any kind of substantiating documentation or eyewitness account or proof. So basically, we try to utilize everything in our power to get the person complained about to self-incriminate themselves. And it's through a variety of question and answer and interviewing them and going through and asking for additional records and finally getting them to admit that at some time they might not have been in compliance. So I'm just putting that out, there as just a little bit of a reminder. That's all.
Okay, all right, well, thanks, Janita. I understand the problem that you're explaining. I guess people don't understand what anonymous means exactly sometimes when they add that additional information in. And I don't know if there's any way to make it any clearer on the when they fill out the application, but I don't know how else they can communicate with them other than what's on the website for them to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, but I just figured I would just mention it, that's all.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
I thank you for your time and I thank you for letting me just put that out there.
No problem. Okay, thanks, Janita.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, board members.
For the record, I'd also like to note that Peter Jennings, his board member, has joined us as well here today. Peter, thank you.
Sorry for the delay.
No problem. Okay, under excuse me, under old business. Quite a while back, we developed some task force working groups to look into various areas and make recommendations to the department for either statutory or regulatory changes. Excuse me. At this point, I'm going to suggest that we can drop these three at this point. We're going to try to get together with the commissioner and Leslie to address any of these that are regulatory and hopefully get those corrected or modified through regulation. We recently finished the legislative session, and some of these items that were in, for example, continued education have been addressed, and I'll mention those in a few minutes. So unless the board has an objection, I think, Karen, we can drop from the old business now, those working groups, and we will just pick it up now. I'm going to give a little time for Leslie and the department to catch their breath after the legislative session. So we'll work on those very soon here. Any objection? Okay. All right, so we'll drop that item 1 from now on in its subcategories. Item number 2, the substitute House Bill 6100. Which were also rolled up the proposed bill 5151 that we were very concerned with. 6100 was an old bill, and it also had a lot of department language changes in it, covering different aspects in different areas of the department. However, included in 5151 were bill number 6100, which required some particular changes that affected us on the from an electrical industry standpoint. The bill has passed through the Senate, the accumulation of 3 bills put together, which is now Bill HB 5330. The bill presently sits waiting for a public act number to be assigned, I believe, by the Secretary of State. And then it goes to the governor for his signature. There's 2 areas, 2 sections of the bill that was of concern to our industry. One is section 737, and that had to do with contracts with public, private consumers and residences. And in that one in particular, the item had to do with now listing the names and license numbers of the mechanic, the journey person that worked on the project, on the home. It got modified and has been changed now to just having the complete name of the electrician, journey person, the actual worker, field worker, to be listed on the contracts, invoices. That bill actually is scheduled to become effective July 1st of this year. Again, still subject to the governor's signature, which all indications are that there should be no issue with that. The second part, or another portion of that bill, affects continued education. And in that continued education, which was also part of the task force proposals, okay, was to place limitations on class sizes for in-person as well as virtual classes. That has been incorporated in there. Continued education online has been incorporated in that bill. The clarification that continued education may not be offered at a contractor's office or place of business has been included in that bill now. And also that all classes, whether virtual or whether in person, will need to be recorded and maintained for 30 days. Should the department need to go back and look at anything relative to that class. That section is effective upon passage, which would mean upon the governor's signature. So if the governor was to sign it today, it would become effective today. But it's not even at his desk yet. But I would expect that to take place within the next 2 or 3 weeks at the latest. That's where those bills stand. Have you got any questions about those? You need any clarification? Once those are signed by once that's signed by the governor, we will request the department to send out a notice to all license holders and all private providers as to the requirements that have changed, so that they can incorporate them into their next year's classes. And also so that all license holders are aware of the new requirement from a contractual standpoint if they work on private residences. Any other questions on that? Oh, okay. You guys are being too nice today. Or I'm gonna walk into a trap. I'm not sure which here. Excuse me. Item 3, discussion regarding OSHA 30 completion requirement. As indicated here in the agenda, that this would be brought up to the apprenticeship council meeting. As we look at applications, we're seeing some people that haven't had it, et cetera, and so forth. We had also talked about requesting a meeting with our board attorney, which will be Raul Rodriguez from the AG's office. He's communicated with me. I told him, based on the current situation of how some things have been changed and whatnot, that at this point I see no need to take any time up on his part for this. And I'll explain to that in just a second here. One of the things that the working group, the department, struggles with is applications that come in that do not have enough information that we need to properly judge whether somebody should be able to sit for a test or not. We have Karen and Pam Brown, myself, we have put together instructions for the electrical people if they're in state, out of state, based on what type of situation they have or how they're trying to get to a different license level or a new license level or whatever. And that has been sent to the commissioner. The commissioners reviewed it and approved it. It is now on the DCP website. So if you go to the DCP website and you go under electrical, and you'll see the application information there. That's much clearer, I believe, as to what we need. You'll also see in there's a chart that indicates how many hours of OJT is required and how many hours of related instruction is required. And for everybody's information, the requirements for the E2 is now published at 720 hours. Okay. I want to thank Paul for helping me in digging out some old history and minutes and meeting comments that were made where that was changed to 720 as far as we're concerned. So it is now published on the website. So that's why I say some of these things have been cleaned up a little bit in the last few months. Anybody have any question about that right now? No. Okay. Good.
Yeah, Larry, sorry about
Yes.
that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was gonna comment on that because I was just on the site the other day for the prep class and I noticed that everything had been listed and it's back to 720 and all that. So I thank you for that because it seems to clarify things.
Yes. Again, our position is that the department sets the requirements for licensing. One of them is a completed apprenticeship program, but we are looking at 720 hours. So there's additional classes that are needed from the federal minimum requirement. You also notice on that chart, Pete, that the C7, C8 areas for sign licenses, we are going to be clarifying that a little bit more depth. It's kind of open-ended a little bit too much, so we're going to qualify that, as you see noted on that site. And to do that, we will be using some of our board members and some industry people as well in the sign industry to zero in on the actual curriculum that will be required. So we're kind of, I think Karen, if I may, without putting you on the spot, I think and Pam, I think we've got that cleaned up quite a bit. Am I correct?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully. And I know I believe the commissioner is asking some of the other occupational board chairs to try to utilize what we put together as a template for them and modify it to fit their license categories. So
Right.
hopefully
Thank
that'll
you,
be-
Larry. You worked very hard on that. A lot of people did, so.
It was a big undertaking, and Larry, thank you for your work, and Karen also.
no problem. No problem. Glad to get some of the stuff cleaned up. It's been a long time coming, so.
Mhm.
Okay. Excuse me. Moving on to item number 4, update on continued education for license types for 2022 cycle. There's not really much of an update there other than people are taking the classes in view of the law that changed last year that people were not aware of. I think providers are trying to provide as many classes as they possibly can with the number of instructors they have to try to meet the deadline for the continued education. Anybody that doesn't make that deadline, I'm not sure. I have not heard for sure what the plans are, but I would at this point suggest that if the providers want to continue to offer classes for 2022 after the deadline, I think there's certainly nothing wrong with it, and it will only help the license holder while we get over this little hump of last year. As far as the continued education, number 5 for 2023 cycle, that information, the curriculums information is all posted on the website. All the providers have been notified that we have on file, have been notified of the curriculum, and they all have been invited to a meeting at 1 o'clock today. Excuse me, relative to the new method of submitting the curriculum. We will no longer need them to submit thumb drives or binders or any of that nature. It'll all be electronically submitted. They'll be able to upload it. Basically, once it's uploaded to the system, I will get a notification as well as the department that XYZ provider has uploaded their information. We'll be able to go in, access it, review it. If everything's complete, we can approve it, and they will automatically get an email of approval that quickly. So it'll be self-generated. If there are areas that are lacking something, for example, maybe a certificate of insurance that's outdated, okay, all the other areas are okay. We'll be able to approve all other areas, but not approve the overall program until they submit a new certificate of insurance, of which we will be notifying them again electronically the same way. So it's going to speed up the process very much. As far as limitation on size of putting material in from a provider standpoint, we've been assured by the IT people that there is no limitation. So the plumbing continued ed people are currently using that system, and it appears to be working fine. But some of them will be joining us today at 1 o'clock as well, just to be updated. So those are, again, some additional improvements that have been made, which I think are very critical to the process here. Okay, anybody have any questions, anything so far?
I just wanted to clarify, it is not on the website yet, the 2023 curriculum. We're working
Oh,
on
you-
that. So
oh,
I
you
just
didn't-
wanted to clarify that.
Oh, okay, all right, I thought it was on.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, thanks for that clarification.
I know that's a priority. So
What have you
maybe
been
we can
doing?
touch base after the meeting.
What have you been doing all this time?
I don't know.
Okay, the next item is the item 6. Appearance by Peter Repochio. He's president of Sign Pro. Peter had addressed the board a while back with some concerns as to the need for licensure for working on signs. In particular, he was referencing changing the face of a sign out. And we asked him to, we had a lengthy discussion. We asked him to go back to UL, excuse me, and provide us with some information. So I believe Peter is here with us today. Peter,
Yeah.
thank you for coming back. And thank you for getting the information to us that you did get. However, before we start on this, I just want to raise a couple of questions to you. First off, I'd like to just swear you in under oath as we talk about this, because I know you're looking for opinion of the board. So could you please raise your right hand? And are you able to put the audio video on?
I think I'm on, actually.
Yeah, we have no video yet.
I'm going to move him over to panelist status. I don't think he can use his video when he's in as an attendee.
Okay,
Okay, now he should be able to use his video.
Am I here?
hi, Peter. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for having me in the board and what you do, and certainly appreciate your time.
Peter, would you please raise your right hand? And state for the record your full name.
Peter Repochio.
Okay. Do you solemnly swear that the evidence or comments you are about to give concerning the agenda item relative to signage and licensing is nothing but the truth, the whole truth? So help you God.
It is, and it's based on my continuing education classes as I've been taught along. And that's why I sit in front of you today, to better understand and to be sure that the laws are enforced as they are discussed and taught to us in our continuing education courses.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Peter. Peter, I got, first off, you sent us a fair amount of material here. You sent us some photographs, or at least I have them. I'm not sure if all board members have those, but do you have any intent on filing a complaint on this particular sign issue?
Well, the issue all becomes, I'd like to get to the situation of the sign face first, because that will bring us to any complaint or further complaint or my course of action.
Okay. Because I want to be careful that we don't have information put forward here that will come back later as in the form of a complaint from you. And then in essence, the board would have to recuse themselves because they've already had the information. From a
Well,
hearing.
I think, not to interrupt, but I think my situation is that I need to understand, and as the previous minutes, that everyone was somewhat in agreement, in general agreement, that the sign face is a component of the sign. I was asked to provide the backup information of that from United Laboratories, Underwriter Laboratories, which I did, not only in an email back, but from the actual email board, or I'm sorry, the UL board member or members, that clearly states that the sign face is a component of a required specification.
Okay. All right, so let's keep our discussion strictly to the response from UI relative to the sign face component. I don't want to hear any discussion relative to at this location or that location, we saw this and we did this and somebody did that wrong or what have you. I just want to clarify whether the sign face is required to be covered as a licensed person if somebody changes a sign face.
Well, I believe that was the reason for my question, because it is being questioned and not understood correctly by several officials throughout the state.
All right, so and I think the board all understands that, okay, that's one of the issues, and it's somehow you got involved in it. So I want to refer to, and I believe the board should have a copy of the email from Thomas Verasconi from UL. And what I will do is let me read it so that everybody's aware of it. It's long, but it's not too bad. Hi, Pete. I hope that you're well. I discussed this with Vinny Zotto too, who does many more signs than I do. And here's what we have. The sign face material must be UL listed or recognized. If it is UL recognized, it must be found in the UL 48 SAM. From there, the manufacturer must follow the guidelines of the notes for the material being used. Anyone can access the SAM. It is a free website for anyone to access. I usually encourage AHJSs and electrical inspectors to register for the website. This way, they can check on components without really bothering anyone. And he provides the link for that. And he says, please see my additional notes and information below. And this is information on UL 48 FUII, okay? And it's listed as L29 component accessibility and enclosures. And this appears to be a copy and paste out of the UL book. It says, when determining compliance of class 2 LED drivers with 4.2.2.1.1, consideration shall be given to all accessible light parts operating above class 2 limits. Unless a UL certified class 2 LED driver is provided with an integral field wiring compartment, connections made at the input of the class 2 driver shall be enclosed in the suitable driver box or with materials in accordance with 4.1.3. And then he has this highlighted. Sign face materials may only be used to complete an enclosure when procedures described or if specified as acceptable for completing an enclosure in the ULIQ for sign components. Now, that section in particular, the very beginning of it, because it says, when determining compliance of class 2 LED drivers. Okay, which leads me to believe we have a LED sign. Okay. The next section says information UL 48 standard, 4.1.4.2 faces. 4.1.42.1, a sign face or multiple section face shall be secured such that during normal movement of the face and sign, during normal movement of the face, the sign shall comply with 5.9 exclusion of water test. And then it goes on to say 4.1.4.2.2 is a means such as a barrier, securement, or equivalent shall be provided so the movement of the sign face does not reduce spacings below the minimum required to a live part or heat producing component. The next section says a rigid polymeric sign face shall not be relied upon to support electrical components such as through wall housings, conduit connections, and the like, unless the sign face complies with the applicable requirements of the standard for electric sign components, UL 879. Lastly, it says a flexible sign face shall comply with the applicable requirements of the standard for electric sign components, UL 879. Please let me know if you need anything else. Be well. Regards, Tom Verasconi, Senior Field Engineer, UL. This is the information, correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, that you've submitted on and was able to receive from UL on the issue.
Correct.
Okay. So our question at hand here is it licensable work to change out the sign face? Is it part of it?
Well, I think that it was asked, is the sign face a component? Which, per the returned information, Mr. Vesconi provided a pretty strict material specification to prove that it is.
The issue I have here a little bit, and I look for the board's input on it as well. His response here, he says when determining compliance of class 2 LED drivers. So if this was a non-LED sign was comprised of a fluorescent or some other lighted source, he's really only addressed the LED, in my opinion, type sign.
Our understanding was that is the sign an electric sign, meaning is there power to it, and that's why I sit in front of the electrical board and not the building board.
Yeah, I agree with you, because that's why we're here, because it's an electric sign. Okay, I mean, I believe what UI is saying is, and I interpret it this way at this point, that everything within the sign itself, okay, whether it's the exterior four-sided frames, the back of it, the face of it, whether it's clear, whether it's translucent, no matter what it is, that entire assembly is, and it's electrified, obviously. Is that all licensable work? I believe that's the question you're presenting to us.
Correct.
Before I make any other comment, I'll look for my board to offer their comments on it. Excuse me. Any board members want to make a comment to that?
Larry, I've had a little bit of experience in signs. I do know that some of the work out there, you open up a sign and the interior is absolutely atrocious. You know, quite frequently, you know, especially, you know, I did it when it was mostly fluorescent lamps and ballasts and, you know, all the wireways, all the covers would be missing, splices all over the place. You know, a lot of it is, there's, you know, a fair contingent of electrical on there. And I would say that I believe that it's licensable work. So, because I don't think that I know some of the contractors who do a lot of sign work don't have any electricians do it. And like I said, I've had a lot of experience with it in primarily convenience stores, that type of stuff. And like I said, the work is atrocious.
Mhm. And I think we have to understand as we analyze this issue that although today's modern signs are typically LED, there's a numerous number of signs, as you just alluded to, Mr. Jennings, out there that are not LED. And that may be made up of different materials, but overall the entire sign, electrified sign, is UL listed and approved, and that would include its components as well. So whether it's a new sign or an old sign, it's the same situation.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, who said that?
John,
Yes, John.
I think irregardless of whether it is low or high voltage, all of the requirements of the National Electrical Code apply, that the equipment, again, being UL listed, installed in the proper manner, apply here. And some reason people feel because it's low voltage, these do not have to be followed. As far as we're dealing with signs that are exposed to the elements for water and everything else, you can still get killed in low voltage, whether people think so or not. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Hey, John. Anyone else from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I think I'm in agreement with Mr. Jennings and Mr. Yusa on their comments. And you know, I think the National Electrical Code clearly clarifies the sign.
Okay. Paul?
No, I agree with the other members as well. I think an unqualified person may not use the correct equipment in a sign retrofit kit if that's going from fluorescent base to LED. And I could see a lot of room for error with the installations without having the training, which would be via the license.
Yeah.
So I agree with the others. I believe it should be licensable.
Okay,
I
thank you,
agree.
Paul.
I agree as well. I think from a safety perspective, it makes sense to have people who, you know, have the same training as other electricians. And if you think about different light fixtures that might have different components to it, it's still a light fixture. So whether it's a sign that has different components or a light fixture has different components, it's still an electrician that would be installing it. And I don't know if this is necessary, but in full transparency, I have worked with SignPro on signage on my job sites, so I know them. So I don't know if that needs to be disclosed to the board, but in full transparency, I do have an existing relationship with SignPro.
Okay.
Just putting it
Right.
out there.
All right, thank you, Jackie. I mean,
Sure.
if you feel as though you need to recuse yourself on this, you certainly can, but usually when you recuse yourself, it's because you have additional knowledge and or you have financial interest of some sort.
Okay,
And
sure.
so from my perspective, I don't see a need for that.
I don't think so either. I just didn't, just to be transparent, I wanted to make sure people know that I have worked with this company before.
Okay.
So,
Thanks, Jackie. Okay. So I would have to say that based on the information I'm hearing from all my board members, that any modification to that, to a sign, whether it's excuse me, whether it's for maintaining it, maybe even modifying a lot of times the sign face itself, so let's say in this case, the Lexan or plastic portion of it, component of it, there's a name change, but the whole box stays in place on the piece of real estate. That the name change has to take place. That plastic comes off, goes reworked, and then goes back on. It needs to be done by properly let's say licensed people, properly educated people, so that the integrity of water does not enter the sign, and that it's properly anchored as well, so it doesn't fall from the sky someday on a windy day and do personal injury to somebody or property damage. So, Mr. Hobart, I believe you had wanted to say something, or maybe I just missed. I thought I saw you hop up here.
No, I'm fine. I'm just revising the document that effective today. You know, I'm doing the draft right now. That any related components to a sign are required to be done by licensed persons, is what I'm gathering now from the full board.
Okay. So I'm going to ask I'm going to propose a motion here for the board to either agree or disagree with. I'm doing this based on our conversation here today. Make a motion that any work relative to installing, servicing, maintaining, modifying an electrical sign, regardless of its lighting source, needs to be performed by a properly licensed sign contractor, by a properly licensed person.
Mr. Chair, I'll make that motion as stated.
Okay.
I will second that.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion for clarifications?
I guess the clarification that I could come up with is the last part of it, a properly licensed person, of which, again, you've got E1, E2, would a C5 or L5 be able to, because it is low voltage, do that work, or do they actually need a sign license? And what would that encompass for electrical education?
It would be E1, E2, C7, C8 licenses, in my opinion.
So if it is a low voltage LED light license, would not, you could not do this as a C or an L license?
Right.
So they would be excluded even though it is low voltage.
Yeah. I think a lot of it goes to the fact of training and understanding UL requirements, is also other items such as concerns such as safety, anchorage, maybe some crane issues involved and so forth. There's a lot of different categories or conditions out there that you might come across. So, any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Yeah, Karen.
Is it part of the motion that would need to be an E1, E2, as you just discussed? I'm not sure if
No, because E1, E2 is an unlimited category, so I don't think it's necessarily that goes without saying. E1, E2 can do literally any electrical work. Unlimited.
well, the discussion, just unless I misunderstood, you were just saying that the C7, C8 person could not do this? Is that?
No,
Or did I-
C7, C8 could. In other words, the motion should just say properly licensed.
Properly licensed person. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
That was just some discussion that people were raising.
All right.
Okay.
Through the
All
chair.
in favor? Raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. So the motion was unanimously approved. Karen? Okay, thank you, Peter. I hope that helps you.
It does, and I'd like to thank you all again. My only last question is now that it's a motion and clarified, I obviously have my continuing ed class next week, and they'll be all happy because they've been teaching us the correct manner, and that it's all been clarified. And I, again, thank you for that. And I'm sure the instructor will be very happy to hear that the state is done that as well. The question I have is when this is not abided by, is it against the contractor, or if there's a violation out there, who are we supposed to call?
If there's a violation out there, it typically goes with the local building official.
Okay, so now that this is clarified, what is the obligation of the building official to abide? Is the building official required by the building state code to take course of action to follow the state requirement of the license?
Peter, as far as I'm concerned, that's an answer that that's something that this board cannot respond to. Building official has to do what his responsibilities are, and I'm not going to speak to those at this point.
Okay, so the building official does not have to follow the state code?
I did not say that. I said if you file a complaint with a building official, it's up to that building official to do what he or she feels is necessary with that complaint.
Okay, but what is the requirement of the building official? Is he supposed to act? So let me ask you this. If someone is out there without a license and we call the building official reports to the site, meets with the contractor, what you just stated that the sign face is a component and you're required to have a license, which is the way it was always understood. We just wanted to clarify it. What is the obligation of the building official?
The obligation of the building official is up to him. We're not going to cross that line. That's not in our jurisdiction here.
So
if you have a question in that regard as to once a complaint is given to a building official, what he or she may or may not do, you need to address that to the state building official that's already having jurisdiction.
So if there's nothing that's going to be done by the local town official or the town manager or the town attorney, then it is right for us to file a formal complaint to the building code, building department.
Yes, you can.
So the state building department will then take a formal complaint. And I guess at that point, I'll meet with the state building code to find out why is a state license required to do business in a town if they're not going to enforce the state law.
That's between, that's, again, you just said it, you need to talk to the local person.
Okay.
We're only addressing, the only we're doing here, Peter, is addressing the licensing and the requirement for it, if it's required or not. And
Okay,
if it's
so
a component.
right, so why is a state license required on a permit application if the building license or the licensee is not held responsible?
I'm not sure I followed that question.
On a local building permit,
Yep.
if the person applied for one, it states that you have to have your C7, C8, or E1, E2 license presented and signed off on to do that work. If that's not the case of enforcement, then what's the reason to have a license for the state level and have all of these continuing education courses and all that money involved if the law by the municipality is not to enforce the law of the state of Connecticut?
Peter, again, this board is not able to take and respond to that totally, but I see Paul Costello has his hand up and he may want to answer or offer us some comments, but we have no authority over how and what a building official does or doesn't do their what they do with information that's provided to them. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, if I can, Mr. Chair, I agree. I think the avenue really needs to be taken up with the state building official as far as what the enforcement requirements are going to be. That's not something that this board could dictate. It really has to come from the state building inspector's office, what their duties are.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul.
It was just a point of, where do I go next? And I really honor all of your discussions and I really appreciate your time. And I thank you for that. It's been very professional. I really appreciate it. And again, I'm all about the state law and I really, really, really do appreciate what you do. So thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Moving ahead here. Item number 7, review of out-of-state occupational trade license for determination of equivalence to Connecticut trade licenses. Indicates here that the working group determined that certain license types in certain states were applicable to Connecticut's certain license types, both dealing with limited license, some limited licenses and some unlimited licenses. As a member of that the working group for the electrical board, I'm going to take exception to this entire section here. I do not feel as though that the only people that can make a determination as to whether it's equivalent or not would be the board, not an individual representative of the board. I happen to be the representative for the electrical board on this issue. And I think if we're going to try to talk about something that's equivalent, and I can tell you this, the term equivalent is a very tough and bad term that's used out there because it's pretty hard to find things that are actually really equivalent to licenses in our industry. There's a lot of variables relative to education, on the job training, exposures and things of that nature. So I'm just gonna take a comment, take exception to item 7, Karen. And at this point, I feel as though that can be dropped. And if the board so desires that they want to take and start reviewing individual license categories from different states, we've been trying to do that on the working group. We've run into a lot of issues with that. And we can let the board decide if they want to identify things such as this one here, the Rhode Island, the data TST and tele TST license equal to T2. And I know John Hughes has already offered his opinion on that, I think in the previous meeting. So anybody have anything they want to add to that on that? I just don't feel that the working group is the correct area to make a determination, if there is a determination for equivalent licensing. It has to be done on a case-by-case basis.
Mr. Chairman, who would be reviewing that to make a decision on that?
Well, what I'm saying is that the board, our board, should make that determination if it's available. In other words, when the working group, we review many applications. For all intents and purposes, every application has something that's a little bit different on it, and it needs to be interpreted properly. So this is
just for clarification, that Rhode Island requires 2 separate licenses, one for burglar alarm, one for fire alarm. And by having the fact that you can now have someone who does interconnect telephone systems, networking, be able to put fire alarms in the state of Connecticut and not have a Rhode Island fire alarm license is kind of a mixed bag of nuts here. And certainly if the board is not going to be the one to make the determination, but it goes to over to labor, it's just a concern I have that it's kind of a backdoor approach of getting a legitimate license in Connecticut and not having the same requirements for the state of Rhode Island.
labor does not make the interpretation of it being equivalent. The respective licensing boards should be doing that.
Okay, back to you.
Labor just addresses apprenticeship. Okay. Any other questions, comments? We can move on. Paul, I noticed you just popped up on video. Did you want to say something, or were you?
Oh, no, I was anticipating coming up on an agenda item soon here for the review.
Turn yourself on, so to speak.
Yep.
Thanks. Number 8, adoption of the 2020 state building code. I'm going to refer to Paul Costello, who sits on that code making panel, as to his update on it. You're muted, Paul, sorry. There you go.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that. Mr. Chair, we met actually this past Wednesday. It's moving through the process. It's going for review currently. Looks like by July 1st, it should start moving forward for an October 1st adoption date.
October 1st.
October 1st, 22. Yeah.
Great, that's good. Any other questions on the state building code? Paul, I want to thank you and all the other members of the committee for all the hard work they've done over the years, and in finally getting this so that we're pretty current. We'll be pretty current on the codes and not be.
If it wasn't for COVID, we would have actually
four
adopted
editions.
in the publication here.
Yeah, 3 or 4 editions behind. So, thank you. Okay, I'm going to take one more, and I'm going to ask if we can take a quick break. Related instruction requirement for the C8 license. As I kind of alluded to earlier in the meeting, we're going to be reaching out to the industry and some providers in firming up the actual curriculum for the C8 license. I have not put together any kind of agenda meetings at this point because we're just getting it all out of the finish up with the legislative process. And I think most people that will be involved with this requirement for the C8 are probably pretty well burnt out right now. So I know I am. So a couple of weeks down the road here, we'll be putting some stuff together and we'll be communicating with the board. So any question on that? We have an application to review. Can we take a real quick 5-minute break here and come right back? Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll pause the recording.
Thank you.